Hello again, John Robertson back for part 3 of the Oscar eForm generator 7.4. I know that at the end of part 2, I said the next thing we were going to do was talk about exporting, but I realized that we have not talked about everything that we can do in terms of input fields. And so before we get to exporting, we are going to look at a few other things. So we have talked about the loading of the image, and we will get actually to loading a second page at some point, but we don't need that right now. We've talked about naming the eForm, we've talked about the radio X boxes, and we've talked about signatures. But there are some things that we haven't talked about in input fields. So we've put a name input in, and we've put a date input in, but we've only used single line inputs. We haven't used the multi-line text input, and we haven't used check boxes or X boxes. So there's a few more things here that we should be having a look at. Multi-line text input is more for instance, if you're putting a patient label on a eForm, or possibly if you've got a field that is several lines in depth, such as, for instance, an address. So we can use the multi-line input, and we can go to the Oscar database. We can scroll down here, and we can look for label, and that label is going to be all the patient's demographics. And then we could change the font size to 14, and we can ask it to automatically sequentially name. And if we do, it is going to name this label, or label 1 possibly. Now, remembering that the instructions for input fields are to drag a box from the top left corner to the bottom right corner, we're going to do that here in our form, and we'll just put the label in the top right corner here. So let's do that. And that will put a patient label in for us. And if we scroll down and go to our fine tuning again, we can have a look down here and see that, in fact, we did get a label inserted, and it was named label. You can also, of course, put checkboxes in. If they're not radio boxes, they don't have to go through the process that we did up here in item 3. We can simply decide to put an X box in. I do usually choose X boxes over check boxes because I find that they come out better on fax machines. They're more visible. Now again, X boxes, you can change the size of the X box. If you, for instance, had a spot that was larger, you could change the font size to 20. Well, you could change it even to 30 if you wanted, but that's a bit big. So let's just put an X box in. You can put a pre-check of the X box, and it'll automatically come with an X in it. And then we'll just sequentially name this one. You could custom name it. You could say that this was, let's say, yes for the name of the checkbox. And then we just need to click somewhere. You don't need to click and drag with X boxes. You just simply click, and it will give you the box. So let's just put a box right here, and that'll give me a 20 by 20 pixel box. If we go down again and have a look in the fine tuning to see if it was named like we wanted it to be named, it in fact was. If we wanted to get rid of that, we could check on yes, and we could go up here and check on delete, and now that box is gone again. If we go back into the input fields, we can also add things like measurements. For instance, height and weight and BMI. Those sorts of things can be added in a single line text input, and we can use the measurement type, for instance, say the height, and we can either put the value in, which is what we would do most of the time, but you could also put the date that the height was measured, or you could put, if there was a comment in with the height. So for instance, if you wanted to put in the height value and then a box beside it that put the date of when the height was measured, you could put both of those in. We do have a list of things. For instance, you can put an A1C in, you can put their triglycerides in. There's a few here. If you do not see, EGFR is something commonly used if you have imaging and you need to show them that you've tested their kidney function recently. So that is something we could put in as well. And with EGFR, you would probably want to put in a value, and then you'd want to put in a second input with the date so that it was within the last, say, 90 days, which is usually what the radiologists are asking for. So then we put EGFR in, and we can custom name it. So we could custom name it EGFR. There's a trick as well that we can potentially look at later where you can both bring the number in or you could push the number back to your Oscar. So for instance, if you had a form and you were requested to put their height and weight in, you could pull their old height and weight from your chart, but you could also put a new height and weight into the eForm today and push it back into your patient's chart, and then that would be the new measurement that you added on the today's date. Let's put EGFR in here, and we will just draw a box for it. There we go. And so that will now pull up the latest EGFR and put it into this field. If you don't see the measurement type that you are looking for, and you do know what the measurement type is, it's usually an up to 4-character name, then you can go in custom here and you can put the custom 4-character name in. Make sure that you get it the same as what it is in your Oscar install, and then you can add any other custom measurements that you have in as well. Just briefly, I will mention that you can change the font family. You can change the font style so it can be italic. You can also change the weight so you can get bold if you have specific fields that you feel need to be emphasized in some fashion. That is pretty much all that we need to do here in the input fields. We can now go on to the miscellaneous options. We often will maximize the window so that it's easier to read, especially on low resolution monitors. We often will try to get rid of headers and footers so that that doesn't show up when you fax out the eForm. There is another way to do this in Firefox or Chrome where you automatically get rid of headers and footers for everything. And I actually recommend that you do it right in Firefox or Chrome. The date picker will automatically allow you to click on any field you've put a date in and see a calendar. I don't tend to do the emphasized check marks because I usually um, am using Xboxes and they can be usually well seen. You can put a fax number in for this. If you have a fax where this is supposed to go to, you can copy it off your page here and you can add it to the fax. You can put a tickler in, say you're sending a requisition for an MRI and you want to have a tickler on the patient's chart. If you haven't heard back about the MRI in 6 weeks or 6 months or something like that, you can actually put that right in. And then once you've done all of that, we want to go on to generating the eForm for exportation. So just before I do this, there are a couple of boxes here that actually don't belong because I was just showing examples. So I am going to go back to my fine tuning. I want to get rid of this label here, and I want to get rid of these two boxes here. So back into the fine tuning, and I'm going to get rid of this one here, and the label and the EGFR. Those are the three boxes that actually shouldn't be there. So I can just delete those three. And the label is gone, and the box here and the box here are gone. And now what I want to do is, I forgot. I need to put the second page on here. So let's go back into load image. And we want page 2. And let's load the second page here. And there we go. This is mostly instructions. It could be added to, or if you didn't wish, you could not add it to. Then we can have, again, if we wanted a label here, but now we have both pages that we've included. And we can now go down to generate. And we can load the HTML in a new window. And then there we go. So this is all of that code now in the regular HTML form that you would see. And we did have a title for this, Mood Questionnaire 2025. So I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to put that in the eForm name. And we've got code for our Xbox and the radio boxes. The signature field is here. We have classic signatures as freeform signatures. We have the calendar program, which allows us to access a calendar. And then this is all the code that we did in the eForm generator, all the way down to the bottom here. And there's some Xbox script at the bottom here and some radio script. And we can now save this. If we now went to our patient, we'd be able to open this up in the patient. And we would find the patient's last name there, and we could go ahead and look and check to make sure that it is the way we want it to be. So I'm going to hop over to an imaginary patient, and we will have a look at this eForm. So I have jumped over to my patient, Jessica Rabbit, and I'm going to add this new eForm to her chart. So clicking on the plus sign here beside eForms, What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go to Show All, and if I click on Modified Date, the newest ones will come to the top. And there's my mood disorder questionnaire. And there we go. Rabbit, Jessica is there. This is today's date. And this is all the Xboxes. And interestingly, because we were using radio boxes, it actually did turn them into circles for us. And they are fairly large. In fact, they're large enough that we're not actually seeing all of the information here, so we might need to push these backwards a few pixels. We can also see that our second page did get added right here. And if we went to print this, we would see that there are 2 pages to print. So this looks pretty much like we're done. We do want to make some adjustments here, maybe moving the radio boxes around a little bit, but basically we've got all the code here. Now, if we wanted to share this as is with somebody, the next step would be to go back to our eForms and go into our eForm library. And this one that we just made, we can download or export, and that will export it to a zip file. Now, the zip files in Oscar will put a number in this H space that you've left in the name. That number actually corresponds to how many eForms there are in your install of Oscar. So you can see I have a few other eForms here. I can save that file back to my eForm generator folder, which is where I usually keep everything. I am going to take these numbers out just to satisfy my OCD a little bit, because don't need those extra numbers in there. And then I can save that zip file to my folder. Sharing it with other people, you can try just attaching it to an email and sending it. Sometimes zip files get filtered out by email programs. You can go in and change the extension of the file from zip to something else. Often we'll just change it from zip to zap. And then, of course, on the other side, after they've downloaded it, they would need to change it from zap back to zip, and then it would work fine for them. You can also store it in Dropbox or Box or another cloud storage and then send someone the link so they can download it. When the eForms get sent to me, I upload them all to oscargalaxy.org, and they will be searchable to find whatever eForm you're looking for, and then be able to download it, and it will be in the zip form when you go to download it. That is part 3 of the eForm generator. When we move to part 4, we are going to start to get a little bit more technical. We're going to start looking at things a bit outside of the eForm generator and how we can modify the eForm further to improve things. Thank you for listening. We'll see you again in part 4.